Guitar intervals, C major, A minor, and related modes, focusing here on the C major scale, the C major note on the top string of the guitar. This is part number 2. Remember, and part of our objective here is to get all of our resources orientated in the same direction, making them as easy on the eyes as possible from the perspective of the player of the guitar, who is of course located behind the guitar. Therefore, when you look at my guitar, it's going to look like I'm left-handed. I'm not left-handed. We just flipped the guitar around so it mirrors what you're doing, hopefully being a little bit easier on the eye. When we are behind the guitar, typically we're going to have the fretboard on our left. We've got the low or heavy string on top. When we go from left to right, we're going towards basically the body of the guitar. Similarly, we have our Excel worksheet orientated where this top string represents the top or heavy string, and then top to bottom, left to right orientated from our perspective from behind the guitar, as though we took the guitar and just implanted it basically onto the screen. That's how it's going to be laid out. We have our worksheet on the left-hand side mapping out the C major scale as well as looking at the other modes. We're going to be focusing here on the C major scale. When we look at the fretboard, one of our objectives as we look at these intervals is to reiterate the primary shapes on the fretboard. So we are in position 5 here. That's going to be if you were to play this in a pentatonic, you'd have that shape. If you played all 7 notes, that might be a familiar shape. If we extend that shape all the way across the fretboard, these colored notes represent all of the notes that are going to be in the scale, which of course would be the C major scale, and then we can think of it from any other starting point, which would basically be any other mode. So we're going to start, of course, with the C major. So as we go through our project, we'll get a better idea, or we will reiterate this pattern across the fretboard, which of course is a movable pattern if we went to another major scale and the related modes. Then we have the intervals. So this is the list of the intervals. We have some abbreviations here, but those, if we look at the C major, those are going to be the intervals that construct the C major chord, and we're going to go through each of those intervals and look for every reachable interval for each of them on each string. The idea being that if we do that, we'll be able to figure it out a few different ways. Each interval I would like to be able to count out on the fretboard, which means we're going to learn how to count things out, like what's the distance on a fretboard, which is a lot more difficult than on a piano, which is kind of linear as we go from string to string. And then we'll also reiterate this shape of course, and then I also want to be able to see the shape of each string. So I want to be able to see the relationship of the interval on each string and see how I can make each interval if I was to choose to reach to each of the strings. Now, one of the theories behind that, how is that going to work? We note that there's only 12 notes, and the interval is the distance, in essence, between the notes. And we know that there's 12 note distance. All notes in the musical alphabet, in other words, are going to be between fret 0 and fret 12 here. So that means that each interval is going to represent a singular note that is in the musical alphabet. Therefore, I should be able to find one, not two, one note on each of the strings that represents each of the intervals. Not only that, but a lot of times when you learn the intervals, you're like, well, I'm only going to learn the intervals that I can reach. So you might think, well, I can't. That's not useful to do because I can't reach some of the intervals. But if there are 12 notes within this distance, and we're looking at something in between it to look at the related interval, what's the maximum distance that any interval can be on any given string? It's got to be like within 6 frets, which is just overreachable because 5 frets is about as far as you can reach on the guitar while you're still holding on to the string up here and fingering something else. So that means that if I can go both ways, up the fretboard and back on the fretboard, I should have a reachable interval for any interval on any string that is within at least 6 frets. So if I know that, then I should be able to be confident to say I should be able to learn the shape of each interval related to each string. And so that's what we're going to do here. Now we're on the top string. We're going to learn those shapes from top to bottom, which is the most common way to learn them. And then when we start learning them from bottom to top, we're going to have to work into the idea of the inverse intervals, which is really important to get an idea of as well, because I can look at the relationship from the intervals from this perspective, this interval to this note, for example. But I can also think about this as my root and go into here, right? So I can flip my mind around and think about it the other way, which is important when you're trying to play in different keys and whatnot. You're just changing your perspective possibly. So the better and the more nimble our mind is to go back and forth to say, I'm going to look at it from this perspective, and then I'm going to look at it from this perspective, kind of like in a physics situation where you say there's no point in the world that's particularly special to do physics. You can look at the same phenomenon from the other perspective and generalize certain things from that perspective. The whole world will look different, even though it's the same distance, right? That's going to be the same idea here oftentimes. That's part of the problem, I think, with guitar, is that we try to learn rigidly going one way, and then we try to fit everything into our way. This is my way of thinking of it, and we lose the flexibility of just, the point is that you want to be able to go back and forth. The more you can do that, the more you have the ability to do different things, think in a different way to do, and that allowed different roads to be traveled. So last time we looked at the interval, which was the perfect first, the 2-note away major second, the 4-note away major third, and we're going to continue now to the 5-note away perfect fourth. Now remember that on the guitar, I want to learn all of the intervals. The intervals, there's only 12 notes, so we're looking at the distance. So there's going to be like 12 intervals, right? The distance between each of the notes, which we often are going to name, the naming conventions being in relation to a particular scale, 7 out of 12 notes. But on a piano, we possibly don't need to actually name the distance in half steps, which is kind of like inches or centimeters. It's our baseline measuring tool, because on a piano it's obvious because it's linear. So I think that's why they eliminated having to say the actual distance. But on a guitar, it's not obvious how far in half steps you are going when you're playing a perfect fourth. The perfect fourth, for example, means that you're playing the fourth of the scale, but it doesn't tell you that it's 5 notes away, and I can't see that if they're on 2 different strings. Therefore, I'm going to have a naming convention that's always going to say it's a 5-note away perfect fourth, right? This is a 7-note away perfect fifth. This is a 9-note away. The fact that I know the distance in half steps and then I know the distance between the strings allows me to count the distance as I would on a piano, even though it's not a linear instrument on one plane. We have multiple planes that we have to basically count through. So that's the general idea of it. So and then the naming convention up top. Remember, if I'm building chords, I'm going to skip every other note. So that means that all of the even notes basically are going to be up here. The 9 represents the second that we skipped. The 11 represents the fourth that we skipped. The 13 represents the sixth that we skipped. So for my purposes, I'm going to think of, you could say, if I'm on 11, for example, that's the same as the fourth. But it's just because we counted up. Now, again, you could think about octaves. I'm removing the octaves and thinking of all the notes as in a circle. They're in a circle, and so I'm going to say it's the same thing, right? It's going to be the octave is going to be the same thing. So a perfect fourth is the same thing as an 11th. It just depends on how you're going to do the naming convention for our purposes here for our interval construction. All right, so that's what we're on this time. So if I'm on the C, what I want to do is find it's a 5-note away perfect fourth. That's the one we're on. So I could count this way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it goes just over our our distance here, right? So I got 5. So I could go up there, and notice that's about as far as you can go while I still have my finger down to reach up here, and that's on the higher bit of the guitar, so it's a little bit easier to do up here than it would be, you know, back here. But I can also go the other way and say, here's my F over here. So that means if it's 5 notes away this way, 12 minus 5 is 7, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can start to think about the inverse. Like if I don't want to go past that 12 point, I could say, well, I could go back this way, which would be, now obviously I can't reach that one while having my fingers still down over here, right? So if I went from this way to this way, it'd be a 7 note away, and a 7 note away would be a perfect 5th. The inverse of that, if I go from here to here, I'm going to say is a 5 note away perfect 4th. So notice when I count the notes in between, it's going to be 7, but the inverse of that of 12 notes is 5. So we have to kind of think about those inverses, and that will become more important when I go to notes down here and measure above it, because we're going to have to figure out the inverse distance, and so we'll talk more about that later. So but I can also go up here just to get the sound a 5 note away perfect 4th. All right, let's go underneath. So if I go 1 string down, where's the 5 note away perfect 4th? Well, I can kind of cheat and say it's right there. Boom. So 5 note away perfect 4th is right there. Is that where's my orange? Oh, there it is. I put it over here. Orange is a little easier to see. So there's the 5 note away perfect 4th. How do I know that distance? Well, I can count the distance between the 2 strings is just 5 notes. That's how much the distance is between every 2 strings, except between the fault line, which is right here, which we'll get into later. So there it is. If I counted it on the guitar, I can just go down 1, boom, boom. That's 5 notes away. A 5 note away has a distance of a perfect 4th, or from a chord construction, I might call that like an 11th, right, of the chord, of a chord construction, which for my purposes here is equivalent to the 5 note away perfect 4th. Okay, so then I just want to know that shape, right? So that shape, if I go one string down, the 5 note away perfect 4th is on the same fret. So I'm going to try to keep listing that in my mind. I can count it out, and then I can just kind of memorize the shape. If I go 1 string down, the 5 note away perfect 4th is right there. That means that the inverse, by the way, is a 7 note away perfect 5th. So if I measured from this string up to here, that means that would be a 7 note away perfect 5th, which we'll get more into later. So now let's go on to the next string down. I could see it right there, and let's count that out. So if I go, this will be 5, 10 to here, and I want to go 5 notes away. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Boom. So if I counted that on the guitar, if I go 2 strings down, it's going to go, okay, 5, 10. If I didn't have my little worksheet, I know that I'm looking for a 5 note away perfect 4th that is 2 strings down. So 5, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So notice there it is. So if I go 2 strings down, then where's the 5 note away perfect 4th? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frets back. So if I go 2 strings down, the 5 note away perfect 4th will always be 5 frets back. Unless, of course, I don't have any real estate back here in order to go back any further, or if I'm over the fault line. If I'm over the fault line between these 2 strings, then it's going to be the distance is short, right? This will be shifted up 1. It's going to be the general idea. So I'm going to think of this as the default as not going over the fault line, unless, and then the going over the fault line is the exception. I'm trying to make this as specific in my mind as possible, because that's how I want to think of it in my mind, right? I want to say, okay, that's the shape under normal conditions. The exception to the rule is if it's going over the fault line here. All right, now let's go to the next one down. So if I go down 1, 2, 3 strings, and I'm looking for, there's the F. Let's count it out. So I'm looking for a 5-note away perfect fourth. So it's going to be 5, 10, 15. And then I could bring that down to 3 because there's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. So 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 4, 5. So there's the 5-note away perfect fourth going this way. So if I count that out on the guitar, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, which I can say, okay, 15 minus 12 is 3, which that's going to happen all the time, that little bit of math, if you count it out this way. So you're just going to memorize that. Okay, I could bring the 12 down to 3, and then 4, 5, boom. So there it is. So we're going to say, okay, so that means that if I go down if I go down 3 strings, then the 5-note away perfect fourth, and sorry, sometimes I get these two confused because of the name convention. It's a 5-note away perfect fourth and a 7-note away perfect fifth. So a lot of times I want to say it's a 5-note away perfect fifth, but no, it's a 5-note away perfect fourth and a 7-note away perfect fifth. So if I go down 1, 2, 3 strings, the 5-note away perfect fifth is always going to be 2 frets forward. So I want to start to memorize that shape, and so I don't have to count it out. I could just say, I could see that shape and say, okay, that's going to be a 5-note away perfect fourth. And then if I need to prove it to myself, I can basically count it out, of course. Now notice what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that's a 5-note away perfect fourth when it doesn't cross the fault line. I'm saying it's a 5-note away perfect fourth by definition, and then the exception would be if it crosses the fault line, then I take it into the exception. That's how I'm gonna list it in my mind, right? So then let's go down 4 strings, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there I can see it back here. So now I'm gonna say, okay, now this one, by definition, if I go down 4 strings, it's gonna cross the fault line. There's no possible way for me to be on the guitar and go down 4 strings and not cross the fault line between these 2 strings. Therefore, again, I don't really have to list that in my mind. I don't have to say this is what happens when I don't cross the fault line. This is what happens when I do cross the fault line, because I'm always going to cross the fault line. Therefore, if I go down 4 strings, the distance, the location is always going to be the same, because I can only do that from the top 2 strings. So the relative position going down 4 strings is actually easier. It's always the same because it never crosses the fault line. It always crosses the fault line. All right, so that's going to be, how would I count that? It would be 5, 10, 15. Here's the fault line. So I could bring this back down to 3, right? So 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 3 plus 5 to go up to here. Here's the fault line, so I'd go up to here to get to 5, and that would bring 5 plus 3 is 8, 7, 6, and then down to 5. So let's count it up this way. So I'd say this is 5, 10, 15, which I could bring down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. And then go up this way diagonally for another 5. That brings me to 8, 8, 7, 6, 5. So boom, right there. So that means when I go down 4 strings, the 5-note away perfect fourth or 5-note away ninth, a major ninth, right, is going to be always 2 frets back. It's always going to be 2 frets back. Okay, so then I'm going to say, let's go down 5 strings. So down 5, and again, we're probably just going to say, look, there's where it was on the top string, there it is on the bottom string. Or back here's where it was on the top string, here it is on the bottom string. So when I look at the top and bottom string, I'm probably going to go, oh, okay, this is a 5-note away perfect fourth. Boom, there's the 5-note away right there, and therefore that's going to be the same down here. Right, so I won't even count. You could count it out, but I won't do that again. It's kind of tedious because that's probably the easiest way to find it most of the time. Okay, so then let's go to the next one then, and let's say we go to this one, which is going to be a 7-note away perfect fifth, which is going to be in our normal chord construction. So our normal chord construction skips every other note, 1, 3, 5. Therefore, the naming convention when I build a chord is the same as the naming convention of the note related to the scale that I'm in, which in this case is the C major scale. So we're talking about a perfect fifth. So a perfect fifth, the 5 here means that it's the 5th note in the scale, and I'm going to add that it's 7 notes away. That's the distance in our base unit of measurement, half steps, 7 notes away. So it's a 7 note away perfect fifth. So if I go on the top string, notice I can't really go up this anymore. I could say it's going to be out to here, but that's pretty far past my repeat point. So I'm going to have to go back the other way. So if I have to go back the other way, I've got to say, well, the 12 minus 7 is 5. Therefore, the distance between these is going to be 5 going backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my G going backwards. So if I measured it this way, from G right there to C, that would be a 5 note away, which would be a perfect fourth, and therefore the inverse going from C to G must be a 7 note away perfect fifth. So you see how those inverses are going to be helpful to us, because I can look at the distance between the two notes, and then I can figure out from the perspective of either note what it is by looking at the distance or the inverse distance, which is 12 minus the distance. Because if you think of it as a circle and you're going around the circle, if one way to go around the circle is 5, then the distance going the other direction is 7, right? Okay, so then we're going to say, because it's a 12 unit circle of half steps, by the way. All right, let's go to the one underneath it. All right, so the one underneath it, now this shape should look very familiar because you want to get it down in your mind clearly, because it's the standard power chord, which is kind of like the ambiguous shape. So if you don't want to like reveal that you are playing in a major or minor scale, you can eliminate the third and just play the 1 and the 5, right? So we can say, if I count it out, I'm going to say that's 5 distance here, 6, 7. So if I count this out this way, and I had it here to be 5 down here, 6, 7, boom, boom, that's my power chord. So anytime I see that shape, I'm thinking, oh, that's the perfect fifth. That's the perfect fifth. So I'm going to go, so anytime I go down one string, the perfect fifth will be 2 frets forward, except when I go across the fault line. If it was between these 2 strings, it's going to be pushed out. This whole tectonic plate has been pushed out to the right. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to say this is the default. I'm not going to say the exception typically in my mind if I go through this routine. I'm just going to note when I get across that fault line that is the exception. That's when I'm going to list it in my mind and say, but because I crossed the fault line, I'm going to have to shift it up. All right, so then if I go to the next string down, we go down to here. So now I can see it right there. So let's count that out. If I count it down, it's going to be 5, 10, 9, 8, 7. 9, 10, 9, 8, 7. So we're going to say if I count it this way, it'd be 5, 10, and then going back 9, 8, 7. So that shape I want to start to make that familiar. That's a lot less familiar possibly to most people, but it's actually a really useful shape, because you can see right in between here, you've got that third. So this is a very natural shape visually, because you have the 1, 3, 5 in like perfect order right there. So I want to be able to see, okay, if I go down 2 strings, where's my perfect fifth? It's 1, 2, 3 frets back. If I go down 2 strings, the perfect fifth, the 7 note away perfect fifth, is 2 frets back, unless I'm going across the fault line. All right, let's go down 3 strings, and I could see 1 here and back here. This one's the closest one, right on when we repeat. Let's count that out. So if I go down 3 strings, it's going to be 5, 10, 15. And now I'm not going to bring it down to 3. I'm going to keep it at 15. No, I should bring it down to 3. Let's go 15 minus 12 is 3. And then 4, 5, 6, 7. So there we have it. So now I'm going to go, let's count it on the guitar. So it goes 5, 10, 15, down to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom. So now from here to here, Now, whenever I see one that's like on the border, I should also have one over here. So whenever I go down 1, 2, 3 strings, and I'm not crossing the fault line, I'm more likely, by the way, of course, to cross the fault line when I go down more strings, right? But if I go down 1, 2, 3 strings, it's going to be 1, 2, 3. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets forward. So whenever I go down 3 strings, the 7-note away perfect fifth will be 4 frets forward. Is that right? 4 frets, 1, 2, 3, 4, which means this here is also going to be back here as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's obviously not really reachable, but you have that nice open. It's going to be open. So you have that. Anyway, so then I'm going to say, let's go to the next one down. We're going to go 4 strings down. Now I'm crossing the fault line now. And every time I go 4 strings down, I have to cross the fault line by definition. Therefore, I don't need an exception to the rule. I don't need to see this is how far it would be when I cross the fault line, like I normally would, because I always cross the fault line if I'm going 4 strings down. So it's going to be 5, 10, 15, which I could bring down to 3, and then I have to go this way for another 5, which brings me to 8, and then back to 7. So if I do that from here, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3, up to here, which is going to be 8, and then back to 7. So there it is. Now that one, most people probably don't maybe know that one as well, but we play it often if we play this bar chord. So it's useful to know if you play this bar chord, you're only playing 3 notes, but it's useful to know like which intervals are which, and now we're looking at this one right here. If I am able to bar that off, get the bar to work that far down, then you're going to be picking that fifth up, which isn't totally important because you have another fifth, of course, with your power chord up top. So if you don't get that bar fully locked down, it might not be the end of the world. Okay, anyway. So what you do want to do is pick up that third. Anyway, let's go down to the next one down, and so we have it. There's one back here. So like I say, usually with this one, what we're going to say is okay, where is it on the top string, and let's mirror that on the bottom string. I could say, well, it's right there on the top string. So it's going to be the same location on the bottom. I can count it out, but that's probably the easiest way to do it. All right, and so then now let's go to the next one down, and so we're going to go to the 9-note away major 6. 9-note away major 6 is an even note from an even distance, so therefore it's not going to be as part of our normal naming construction when we build chords, but will be equivalent to the 13. So we have the 13 over here, which is basically for our purposes the same as a 9-note away major 6. Remembering the major 6 represents that it's a 6-note, it's the 6th of the 7-note scale. The fact that it's a capital M means it's a major, and that should also tell you the distance, which is 9 notes away, but most people don't know that. Therefore, it's useful to me to say it's a 9-note away major 6. So we're going to say, okay, if it's a 9-note away major 6, I could count this way 9 notes, but that's going to bring me way up there. So what I'm going to do is go backwards and look for the inverse. So if it's 9 notes away and there's only 12 notes, that means the inverse is 3 notes away, right? So here's 3 notes away, 1, 2, 3. So if I went from A to C, that would be 3 notes away. And therefore, if I go from C to A, then the inverse is going to be a 9-note away. So 9-note away, major 6, or from the chord construction standpoint, a 13th. Okay, so then I'm going to say, all right, well, now let's go down. Let's go down 1 string, and I'm looking for a 9-note away major 6. What does that look like? A little bit more exotic than the 7-note away perfect fifth, but within reach, we want to know about that one. So if I go down one string and I count that out, it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's like, okay, so if I count down 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so it's reachable. So if I go down one string, the 9 note away major 6 is 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up. It's always 4 frets up. All right, so that's good. I want to just know that shape. So here's my perfect fifth. So the 9 note away sixth is just going to be boom right there. All right, so then I'm going to go down 2 strings. If I go down 2 strings, where's my A? It's right there. So I can start to recognize that shape and say, okay, if I go down 2 strings, 5, 10, 9. So let's count that out here. 5, 10, 9. So this shape, possibly people don't recognize that one as much, but if I want to look at the 9 note away major 6 and I go down 2 strings, it's always going to be 1 fret back, unless I'm going across the fault line. All right, and so then I'm going to say, all right, let's go to the next one down. If I go down 3 strings, the 9 note away major 6, I see one way out here. How many frets is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the maximum distance, which means I should find one 6 frets up this way as well, but let's stick with that one. So this is possibly the least useful one, right, because it's the furthest away. So 5, 10, and then 15. Wait a sec, what did I do? And then I'm going 15, let me count that out. Did I count it out here? 5, 10, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. All right, let's try that here. 5, 10, 15, 14, 13, 11, 12, 10, 9. Whew! So that's not really reachable. So, but there it is, just so we know. So that one's the one that you're going to say, why am I doing that? That's not a reachable one. There's only going to be one that's going to be 6 frets away, which is basically unreachable, and that's 6 frets away on both sides because there's 12 notes. So that's unusual. All right, let's do the next one. If I go down 4 strings, which means by definition I'm going across the fault line, we have one here. If I count that out, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then I could bring that down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. Crossing the fault line diagonally is another 5 to here. 5, 6, 7, 8 plus 1 is 9. Let's count it out this way. Go 5, 10, 15 down to 3. Minus 12 is 3. Plus 5 going diagonally this way is 8. And then there's 9. So then I have, boom. So if I go down 4 strings, the 9 note away major 6 or 13th is always, from a chord perspective, is always going to be 2 frets up, always, because you can't not cross the fault line if you go down 4 strings. All right, and then we're going to say if I go down 5 strings, we could see it's the same, which again, we'll do the same trick. I said, well, where is it on the top string? Well, it's a 9 note away major 6. Therefore, the inverse is 12 minus 9, which is a 3 note away backwards. And therefore, it's also going to be in the same position on the bottom string because those are tuned to the same note. All right, let's try to do the last one here where we're on the 7th. Now, this is an 11. So this is an 11 note away major 7. The 7th is an odd interval, and therefore when we look at the chord constructions, we're still going to have the 7th. It's not part of the normal triad, but it is still in the normal naming convention as we just go from 5 to 7, because 7 is going to be the last note if we're going up in a scale which typically has the 7 notes within it. All right, so we're going to say if it's the 7, it's 11 notes away. So if I counted to the right here, I'd have to go 11 notes up. That's a long distance. So I'm also, if it's greater than 5 notes going this way, it might be easier to look at the inverse. There's only 12 notes in the musical alphabet. The inverse of 11 note away is 1 note away. So I go right back to here, and there we have the 1 note away distance. So if I went from this B to the C, that would be a 1 note away, which would be a minor second. And the inverse, therefore, would be the 11 note away. Because if I went around the circle, I can either go just 1 step right? Or I can go around the other way of the lap and the circle, and it would be 11 notes. So that's going to be the idea here. And so then if I go down one, and you get that, it's kind of the reverse Jaws sound to it, right? With the 1 note away or the 11 note away inverses. All right, so then if I go to down one, I'm looking for the 11 note away, which is the B. So I see one back here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 frets. Notice that's the maximum distance if I go down one string, so it should be 6 frets up this way too, but I'm going past the center point, so I'll just keep it here. So it'll be 5, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, repeating, right? There's the octave. And then I go back one more, and I'm going to get to then the 11. So this would be 0 or 12, and then 11. So let's count that out this way. I'll show you that again. It's going to be 5, and then 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So that 0 is either 0 or 12. If it's 12, right, I start over again, and then I go back down to 1. So it would be boom. Okay, and then if I go down 2 strings, I'm looking for the 11 note away major 7. Down 2 strings, I could see my B is right there. So that's going to be, if I count it out, 5, 10, and 11. That's possibly the easiest one of the easiest ones to locate. So I'm going to say this is going to be 5, 10. 10, by the way, that shape right there is going to be a familiar minor 7, which is useful in the blues, even if you're playing a major scale and in the minors. So I think that's more popular than major 7 possibly. And but then of course the major 7 is going to be 1 up. So right there, boom. Whoops, I was on the wrong fret the whole time. Down 2, it's going to be right there. There's the minor. I'm losing my voice. Almost there. Don't go yet, voice. So then we're up 1 to get to the major. So if I go down 2 strings, the 11 note away major 7 is always 1 fret up, unless we cross the fault line. All right, let's go down 3. If I go down 3 strings, I see it right there. Let's count it up. It's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then I'm going to say 14, 13, 12, 11. Notice when I get to 15 here, you might say, I'm just going to bring that down to 3, which oftentimes is the way to go. 15 minus 12 would be 3. But in this case, I'm going backwards and I want to count down to 11. So you probably don't want to do that. I want to count down to 11. If I did that, I'd bring it down to 3, and then I'd have to say 3, 2, 1, 0, or 12. 12 minus 1 is 11. So it still works either way you do it, but typically I wouldn't bring it down to 3 in that case, right? So it'd be 5, 10, 15, and then 14, 13, 11, 12. Notice, by the way, you don't always count down from 15 to 12 or 11, 12, 11. So you might think you're stupid. I know I felt kind of dumb, like I'm not counting right I'm like skipping numbers from going from 15, but I think that's kind of normal. Like we don't really count backwards all the time. You certainly don't do the alphabet backwards, so you're not stupid. At least you're not dumber than me if you have problems saying the alphabet in reverse. so it takes some practice. It's useful to do in music, of course. So then we're going to say, all right, let's go down 4. So we're looking for the 11 note away major 2nd if we go down 4 here. And it's always going to be across the octave if I go down 4 strings. So it's 1, 5, 10, 15. And then I could bring that down to 3. 15 minus 12 is 3. Plus another 5 going this way diagonally to 8, 9, 10, 11. So an 11 note away major 7. Here. So let's count it up this way. Getting a little tired here. Let's go 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3. Diagonally up here for another 5 to get us to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Hold on, I messed up. 5, 10, 15, down to 3, plus 5 is 8, 9, 10, 11. I went to 12, that's why. So therefore, if I go down 4 strings, the 11 note away major 7 will always be 1, 2, 3, 4 frets up. And then if I go down to the next string, it's going to be here, and I can locate that by saying, well, where is it on the top string? On the top string, the 11 note away major 7 would be 11 notes up this way, or the inverse would be 12 minus 11, which means it would be 1 note back. And therefore, it's also going to be 1 note on the same fret down here. So there we have it. All right, so then again, what we'd like to do is once we learn to count the intervals and whatnot, I'd like to be able to memorize the intervals that are in the major scale. I'd like to be able to kind of memorize this shape, so I know all the colored notes because I know like my 5 shapes up the fretboard. If you don't, that's fine because you could still do it, but this could kind of reiterate that because I shouldn't land on any of the white notes when I do this, because that would be outside of the shape. Right? So if I do, I can see that's another check figure in my mind as an accountant, right? I can say, whoop, there's something wrong. Internal controls have been violated, and then you go back and figure it out. And then I can hopefully just practice that by counting up without the worksheet. I can just have my fretboard, or even do it visually in your mind, which is difficult to do. If you can visualize the fretboard and count up and back and start to visualize things, that you could do it as you're raw dogging on the plane or something. I don't know if they use that term right. I'm hearing people use this term. I don't even know. I might have said something vulgar. I don't even know. I think it's just like, I don't know. But I'm just saying, is you're just kicking it there. You got no electronics or anything, and you're just thinking in your mind. You could try to visualize in your mind an exercise kind of like this, and think about where each interval is in relation on the guitar, which would be I think, extremely advantageous exercise. It's kind of like a meditation, even if you can visualize that. But that's actually, could be quite productive. Anyway, that's just a thought. So that's it.